third season of the now Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser podcast. We changed things up a bit with a name change, and the podcast is full of diverse guests who have fascinating stories of how they are leading their own lives, taking risks, serving others, and loving the lives they lead. They will share how they lead their own lit up lives, how they achieved inner peace and joy, and the work they did to get there, and continue to do to stay there. Join Debbie this season as she digs in, shares how she started and continues to love herself, love those around her, and love the work she feels called to do. This season, you will hear some real and deep areas of Debbie's life as she shares the work she has done and continues to do to lead her own life in the hopes that through her experiences, you might be able to move into a more lit up life yourself. Listen in as she shares experiences, stories, and tools to help you. Now let's get started.
Hey there, welcome back to Faithinfused Leadership. This is Debbie Heiser, owner of Three Vines Consulting and Leadership Development and creator of Lead Your Lit Up Life. I am so excited today to have Amira Alvarez with me. Let me just tell you a little bit about how I met Amira. I met Amira at a conference I went to back in 2018, and she has this phenomenal business that I'm going to let her talk a little bit more about, but I met her through that. And over the period of the last 3 years or so, I have been to numerous conferences, summits, different things that Amira has. I'm a private client of hers. She's my business mentor and business coach, and I just absolutely adore her and wanted to spend some time speaking with her because she has a really fantastic, just passion about her serving the world and what that means as far as a leadership perspective. So that's how I know Amira, but I want Amira to give us a little bit of her background and where she came from, and then we'll just have a conversation about leadership.
All right, let's do it. So first of all, I want to say that I am equally as excited to be on your podcast, Debbie, as you are to have me on. It's a thrill to talk in a different format and to have it be in this context and to be talking particularly around leadership. So in terms of my bio, my story, where I've come from and where I am now, I think from a leadership perspective, the most important piece is that I didn't start off as a leader. I started off as a solo entrepreneur. Maybe I was leading my life. Like, I love the name of your initiative, right? Like I was leading my life, maybe not so well, but I was leading my life. And I had, I had started a business. I got that fairly successful, and then moved across the country and started a different business because it was a reevaluation. Do I do the same business, different business? And I really started this journey on the coaching front, and it wasn't anything that I had initially set out to do, but I went forward following what I call the breadcrumbs of desire. And I was a solo entrepreneur for a long time, and maybe I had a VA or one person to do some little small thing, but it was pretty much me learning along the way. And the first kind of leadership position was around hiring people to help me at the smallest level. Okay. And that was in my business, but also in my personal life, because when I don't know if this was your experience, but for me, when I was just starting out, I didn't have any sort of, money was tight, and every person that I hired felt like the massive decision on my part. And I didn't really feel worthy of someone cleaning my house or, going grocery shopping for me on the personal front. And hiring a VA felt daunting to me. And I made many, many mistakes in terms of clarity and communication, or project scope, or how to do the business. And I was one of those people who was just frustrated and in my head was saying things like, isn't it better for me to just do it myself? And, right. It'll be faster if I just do it. And I was really stuck in a mental vision that was the opposite of leadership. It was, no one can do it better than I can, which is absolutely cray. Okay.
It's a trap. Yep.
It's a total trap.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to communicate well. So it was a lot of my leadership skills got built through trial and error. I was so committed to the vision, right? I was so committed to what I wanted to create. And I knew that I couldn't, I mean, intellectually, we all know, but you can't scale if you're doing it by yourself. Okay. There's a resource limit. Your time is limited. Okay.
Right.
And so,
and I'm laughing because we get that up here, but then for it to drop everywhere else is sometimes the longest journey, right?
Exactly. And so, you know, I understood intellectually that in order for me to grow my business, I couldn't be doing everything myself. And I had to start hiring people. And that's where so much leverage comes in. And then I had to think about, so what kind of people do I want to hire? What kind of company culture do I want to create? And I've done a lot of teaching on team because it's something I'm really passionate about. I'm not always the best leader. You know, I'm always bettering my best. That's, I guess, maybe the definition of a really good leader. But I make mistakes all the time. Even recently, Debbie, like last week, I made a big faux pas on the leadership front. Okay. And do you want me to share exactly what I did? I'm happy to show you how I effed it up.
Sure. And partially because I think one of the really wonderful things about being a great leader is that there is a sense of humility and this law of 100% accountability, right? That really good leaders say, I'm accountable, I messed up, I'm human, right? And that allows other people to then not focus on, oh my gosh, I can't make a mistake, which then they make the mistake because they're focused on it, versus doing the work and, okay, a mistake happens, it happens, let's figure it out, right?
Completely, 100%. And that's one of the things that has really allowed me to grow so quickly is that I recognize, I step out of the blame game. One of the best things that I ever heard someone say, and I'm just going to share it with you out of context because everyone needs to know this, is blame the system, don't blame the person. Okay. And that's helped me so very, very much. Now, sometimes people make mistakes and they really did make that mistake. But if you can start the conversation even in your head about what's the systems issue here? Oh, we don't have a project plan. No one knows what they're doing. There's no deadlines. The communication wasn't clear. The scope wasn't clear, right? There's something in the system that didn't set this person up for success, and to work with that first. The other thing that I will say, and I know I'm jumping all over the place, so I'll get back to
You're okay.
Mistake, but it's important, is this idea, and I just shared this with some folks in my high level mastermind, and these are people who have $5 million, $10 million, $20 million businesses, right? And I said, you know, and we were having a conversation about hiring and team and leadership. I forget the exact context around it, but it was we were problem solving. And I was like, hire for judgment first, skill set second.
Yes.
And that's so important because you can have all the system stuff and the communication stuff really well dialed in, but you can't micromanage everything. You can't make sure that every scenario is mapped out for someone. At some point they have to use their best judgment. Otherwise you're in there micromanaging, right? And you don't want to spend your time doing that. So it's really important to hire for judgment and then skill set second.
Right. And you know, Amira, it's interesting that you say that because skills can be trained, and you can train some judgment, right? But there are certain things like initiative and judgment that are really core. And then when you get to that and then look at the skills, then it's important too, as you build a team, to look at what are the skills that the rest of the team have. Because if you have 5 people, let's just say 2, you have 2 people that come in that have the same skill set when it comes to judgment and discernment and analysis and those key pieces, but their skill sets are different. You may choose to hire one person or the other based on what's missing from the team, right? So I just wanted to throw that out there as part of that hiring. But
100%. And you have to understand that someone could have great judgment and great skills, but be in the wrong role in your company.
Right.
If we she's smart, she's got a big heart, she wants to do the right thing. Why does she keep falling down here? Okay. Yeah. And so sometimes it's this is not the way her mind works, her intelligence works, and that people have different intelligences. And if you can really put them in the right role, you can have a great, like someone who can be failing can be a great person over here. But oftentimes it's around communication and systems and setting people up well. So the mistake that I made just last week was we had done our big Unstoppable Woman Income Breakthrough Summit, and just pulling back the curtains a little bit, it's a lot of effort. Okay. Like the weeks moving up to it, full on for the days that it's happening. And then there's like the follow-up, right? And a lot of my team is, I have leadership people, and then I have more junior people who are just entering the workforce. And this is, you know, their first or second real job. Okay. And we said, you know, take a couple of days off. Do you want it to be Monday and Tuesday or Thursday and Friday? And my leaders, one of the people on my leadership team was like, I'd like to take my birthday off in 3 weeks. And I was like, oh, that's not meant for you. Like, that's not right. Like, and I was just like flip in my like Skype chat back to her. And, you know, I mean, she was a little like put off by that, needless to say, like when someone thinks that they're getting an extra vacation day and then you're like, no, come on already. Right. that doesn't fly well. Right. That was it. And so my mistake was like, I was flip and I was doing this over Skype. I have a good enough relationship with my team that she was like, you know, hey, look at this. And I then explained, here's your role. This is what I expect of you. You're doing that. If you need to take a half day off, take a half day off. I'm not watching the time clock with you. You're getting your job done or you're not getting your job done. Right. And then she was like, oh, okay, great. But how quickly, the point for this leadership perspective is that I'm not fabulous at HR. This is not like, my brain doesn't work that way. I put my foot in my mouth all the freaking time. Okay. Like, it's like, this is not what you need to say in an interview. This is not what you say to your team, right? Like, this is not good leadership. Okay. By the book leadership. Okay. Like the HR rules and things like that. And you do need someone on your team who's good at that. It's essential. Okay. But what I do is I'm a very good leader in terms of I'm always straight with my team. There's never anything that's passive aggressive, or I'm saying one thing and I mean something else, or I'm not, like, when I said that, I like fixed it in 30 seconds. Okay. Like I didn't let that hang out there. And that to me is what a good leader is someone who can like see a problem, adjust, course correct, and guide the company. And I want a company where there's no drama and it's very clean and clear communication. So I have to show up that way. And if I F it up, but I have to own it and change it, as, you know, get it back on track as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And let's talk about that for 2 seconds here, Amira, because one of the things that I've found, and I'm sure you found this too, is that if you do let it set, right, that person festers and then resentment can start, or they get irritated and they're spending all this energy then on that interaction. And then you end up going off and saying, ooh, I probably shouldn't have done that. So then you spend time on that interaction with that energy, and you're both expending energy on something that doesn't need to happen. Where if you just handled it up front and had your mature adult in charge to say, I messed this up, please accept my apology. Right. Yeah.
And it uses up so much less bandwidth. And the place where people get really hooked is needing to be right. Like, I didn't do that wrong. I didn't make a mistake. I need to be right. I can't look bad in front of my team. And the truth is that you'll look better. They might not like the flip thing that you said. She didn't, right? Okay. But if you're always working at the level of doing the right thing, right? You'll be a good leader. Okay.
Yeah. And really quickly on that, Amira, in past sessions, and I talk a lot about the victim game, or some people call it the drama triangle. And so when you want to be right, that's the persecutor. And so you've jumped into the victim game, and where what I hear and appreciate about you, and what I try to do as a leader too, is to step out of that victim game so that there's not drama, there's not passive aggressiveness, there's safety, right? Like your employee knew she could go, hey, hold on, that didn't feel so great, right? Like, think about this, where you have to set the stage for that safety too, as a leader, to let them know they can kind of call you on it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she also knows that I'm the final decider and
Right.
all of that. But as a good leader, if there's a decision that needs to be made in her lane, I am giving her more and more and more as time passes, agency to go run with it. Like,
Yeah.
you have to trust your team. And that's a big one when you're moving from solo entrepreneur to, running a 7-figure business. You have to go from, like, the story that I told you in the beginning was like micromanaging the VA and like being on top, but you have to, like, how quickly can you move through that? And that is one of the things, you've heard me say this before, Debbie. It's like, how quickly can you better your best? How quickly can you close the gap on that, right? You recognize, okay, this is unsustainable to do it like this. And yet, the details are missing. What do I need to do differently here? Do I need to hire someone? Do I need different SOPs? Like, do I need to up my game in terms of communication? What is it? And how quickly can you close the gap on time on that, so that then you do that iteration over and over again, faster and faster? Then you've grown a really great team.
Right.
It's not like there won't be turnover, because there's always turnover,
Sure.
right? But
there's always blips.
There's always blips, and this has been a year of blips. But
Well, and those just happen, right? And sometimes too, when you have new people join, like, there are more blips because people are learning your processes, learning your systems. And I want to go back. I want to ask you a question based on what we first initially started to talk about. If you had to look at, like, I'm going to set this up a little bit. So when I started out as a leader, and I won't say how many years ago, because I'll age myself, but when I started out leading people, I had like these pillars, right? Like, I'm not wavering from these things. And I had like 6 or 7 things, right? That were like my die in the sand, like I'm not moving from these. And I've gotten down to 1. What would you say to the listeners would be your 1 or 2 kind of pillars? Like, this is what is it you always say, like, stop, no pause. What do you always say? Stop, no pause, no, I forget what you always say, but you're like, stop, not happening anymore.
I'm not available for that.
No, I can't remember. You'll say it and I'll remember. Okay. But it's kind of like, stop, no excuses. This is where it stops. Like, these 1 or 2 things that you like say, this is a no-brainer and won't go away in my system, in the way I lead.
Okay, let me give that a minute to think about. I think it has something to do with, I know it has something to do with treat everyone with respect. Okay. And that's a big one for me. I can count on my hand the times where I've been truly disrespectful. And, it often is, I'm counting the times when I'm the least resourceful. Okay. So the solution to that is good sleep, well-managed schedule, all of that. There's some, tactical skills on that, but like 100% respect for people. I have zero tolerance for disrespecting people as human beings. They may make a mistake, and I might need to say to someone, I'm not going down to your level. You need to come up to my level. Okay. And I can help you get what you want in your career, but this is what needs to change. You need to come up to my level. I'm not coming down to yours. That might sound harsh, but if you do it within the context of a conversation around their goals, what they want, if they're really going for something, then it can be all in how it's said. Like, it's when I say that to someone, it's because I can see that they have the potential.
Right. You see them as that woman or man they want to be, right? Not where they're at today. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not denigrating them by saying that. I'm saying it's time to up your game. Like, you're ready. Let's go. Right. Because this job requires this. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And it's within the respect category for sure. And then the second one is really important, and one that I'm personally working on right now, which is that there's a framework. As a leader, here's the thing. As a leader, I need to be able to vent and get things out of my system because things go wrong. Okay. All the time in business, guys, like just acknowledge, okay. It's not a perfect thing. We're going for excellence. We're working towards it. We're working on the systems, all of that stuff, but things go pear-shaped. The thing that I'm working on, which is not really the question you asked, but I'm
That's okay.
feel compelled to answer this way nonetheless, is getting that out of my system privately to myself, and not with my leadership team, and not with anyone else, because it ends up. People have never said this to me, but I think it's like, if she psychologically in your mind, you go, if she's saying that about them, she's going to be saying that about me. Okay. And that's not okay. Right. I don't want to create a culture that is like that. And so I think it's important that you don't suppress feelings. There will be frustrations, but you need to figure out how to get it out of your system separately, not in front of other people on your team.
Yeah. Step out of the victim game. Because when you do that and talk about a frustration with someone else, then you've just created yourself as the victim, right? And so it's about then kind of processing through that to say, okay, I'm upset about this or mad about that, so that you're not in the victim game. Because once you bring somebody else into it, that's where I'm going with that. Then you start stepping into that game. Yeah.
And the distinction is how you're talking about it. You can have a conversation about, so this, I'm looking at this doesn't seem to be working the way I had envisioned. How's it working for you? Is there a understanding issue? You know, I need your assessment of this person's work job, all of that. And that's very different than.
Right. That's feedback.
Your,
right.
Yeah.
And feedback is a gift, right? Yeah. I mean, we've talked about that, right? So, and so one of the things too, that I think about, and I'd really like for you to share just a little bit, because I think it's important for people to really hear what lights you up. And so, you know, you love what you do. And so there's also this harmony between, you know, busting it out and also managing I don't really even want to call it stress, but managing the harmony between work and having time to recharge a little bit and do those things that bring you joy. And so talk about what lights you up and how you manage that, how you lead yourself through that.
So I'm going to tell people a little bit about my story so they have the context for this.
Yep.
So I started this business many years ago, and, you know, first year in business, 30K, second year in business, 90K, third year in business, 138. I was making some big leaps in the income that I was making, and I was very proud of that, but I had no idea how I was doing it. Like, I kind of knew, but it was what I call the spaghetti technique, right? You throw the spaghetti at the wall and you see what sticks, right? I was just like, did it stick? Okay, that looks like it worked. Let's do that, right? And really, the strategy that I had was hard work and be a good person. And that got me to that 138. It was really solid, but I was working 12, 14, 16-hour days because my strategy was work hard.
Work harder,
okay.
Yeah.
Work harder. That was all I had. That was my entire toolkit. And it seems a little ridiculous, but if you think about it, you'll see like the next marketing strategy. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try that. Let's work harder on that. Right. And it looks like you're implementing great strategies and tactics, but really you're just in push mode. And there was you've heard me tell this story before, but it was this like one very salient moment where I was sitting on the floor of my office. The laptop was in my lap. It wasn't a client facing day. So it was, 6:45 at night. And my husband called upstairs and was like, "Hey baby, dinner's ready. Come on down." And I was like, "Okay, I just want to get one more thing done. Give me 5 minutes." Like an hour later, he's like, "I'm starting." Okay. And he wasn't bitter and he wasn't mad at me. And like, I'm so grateful that he just didn't have any attachment to that. But I was like, this is unsustainable, right? This is not okay. Because not only was I blowing off my personal life with my then husband, but I also hadn't showered that day. I was still in the clothes that I slept in that weren't sexy. They were like dog hair covered sweats, right? And I hadn't brushed my teeth, and like the whole, like my self-worth, like, come on already.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But I know that you have listeners who are like, "Oh my God, that's me. I just did that today." Okay. Right. And I was like, this doesn't work. Like I cannot double my hours to double my income. Like you do the math, that doesn't work, much less triple, quadruple, 5 times. And that year I studied how success happens, what's involved in it, what the causes are to get the effects that you want. I learned that the universal laws of success, how to apply them. I got my mindset right. And I changed my identity. Like I changed how I saw who I was in this world. And as a result of that, I went from 138 to 700K in 1 year, 5 times my income, which is, I'll throw my hair back for a moment and be like, that was great. Okay.
I wanted to break out in song there for a second.
And then, the company and myself, we've gone past the 7 figures, right? Like we kept going. But that was the context for having to figure out, why I was put on this earth and what my impact was going to be. So let me talk about that. So that year that I made that transition, I will tell you that I didn't have a big impact goal. I had a big financial goal. Okay. And I'm very transparent with people about this. That year I wanted to make $1 million. Okay. I don't know where that idea came from. I kind of know where that idea came from, but it was like, I fell in love with that idea and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And clearly I didn't make $1 million. I made 700K, but I teach a lot on stretch goals. That was, I needed to have something that was big enough that I would do the hard things. And, in going through that process and then growing the company past 7 figures, growing the team, creating a work environment that people love, like all these things, I was like, so like now the commitment is I need to have all these women who fit that same category as where I was, understand what it actually takes. Because without, sounding too braggy, I was smart. I was well educated. I had a good heart. I had great work ethic.
I would say the same today, not was.
Thank you.
You have hard work ethic. Yeah.
Totally. I had all of that, right? But it wasn't enough to get me through. And I had, like I said, I had work ethic, but I also had, like, growing up, I don't know if this was the same for you, Debbie, but that, like, if you get a good education and you go to college, get good grades, you'll be set. But I wasn't set. I wanted more for myself. Yeah. And I was hitting these invisible barriers that I didn't know how to change because I had a belief system that was based on outdated beliefs about who I was, how the world works, all that. And so when I figured that out, I was like, I gotta teach people this. Like everyone who's interested in really taking their business to the next level, really growing, right? And I work primarily with women entrepreneurs and small business owners, but I also have some corporate clients and they've done amazing too, because it's really about, I mean, this from being a client, like it's about setting your goals and then understanding how goal achievement works, like the methodology for that. And it's not rocket science, but it's so different than how we all grew up thinking that it was. And you're having that experience now. Like you're like,
yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Now I know too, and partially because this is called faith-infused leadership, that you have a definition about faith, and I talk about it too. But tell us a little bit about how faith played into you being where you are today.
Oh, such a good question. Thank you for asking that. So I will say that I was raised by an academic who like told me God was dead and, you know, like religion was not on the table in my upbringing. There was some religion, but it was like party religion, like for holidays and things like that. Okay. And so religion really wasn't on the table growing up. In fact, there was a strong anti-religion perspective. Okay. And I mean, not belligerently so, but it wasn't supported. And when I started to go through the process of understanding how success worked, the thing that changed in me completely was an understanding of how spirit works to help you achieve the success that you've been born into in this lifetime. So I call it your spiritual DNA. You were born with this growth directive, and how you can either block that or allow it to grow. And if you do the things that are sometimes challenging
and sometimes scary,
sometimes very scary, right? Very scary, and scary because they go against how you were raised. Okay, in many ways, they're not ethically wrong. They just go against how you were raised. And then, but if you keep following that spiritual DNA, you realize that you are divinity in action, and you are always supported, not because you don't have to do things in this world, but because of your duality as human and spirit, and your ability to tap into both and integrate them is where your power lies. And if you understand that, then you can do anything. You can move mountains. And so my faith has really grown through the study of spiritual laws within the context of business and how to apply them.
And what I find,
and Debbie, one more thing. And I had to prove it to myself. Like, the reason I can teach from that perspective so completely is that it's not just pretty words on a page. I lived it. Like, how do you go from 138 to 700K? Like, the numbers don't lie. Okay. How do you go from being in an okay relationship to a completely lit up relationship? Right. How do you go from being a couch potato to running a marathon? Like, all of those things. I'm giving you non-business examples too. It's like I had to change who I was being, but following that spiritual DNA. And that has allowed me to really have faith in a different way because I've lived the laws.
And as you say that too, Amira, I'm thinking about the conversation we had about systems, and typically with a goal. And as you know, from the book Atomic Habits, he talks about, like, you don't rise to your goal, you lower to the system, right? The system that's supporting you to get to that goal. And so it goes back to actually what we were talking about earlier about setting up those systems. And some of that's mindset, some of it's an actual system, some of it's making the choice, right? Using our superpower of choice and just making the choice in the moment. And so with faith, I talk a lot about too, the definition that you had around making the decision, and the decision drops in and the next step is there. It doesn't mean you don't have a vision, but you don't have to focus on that thing that's way out there. When you make the decision, that next step appears. We just have to be open to receiving it. Because I know for me, a lot of times I would get into this little box or into these blinders about which way I thought it should be. And spirit has this so much bigger than we could possibly even imagine. And I don't mean bigger as in scary, but bigger of impact and joy and all of those things that come with it. But we just have to take the first step and then realize that the step is shown to us what we need to do next.
100%. So this has been one of the biggest, greatest shifts, full transformations. I was going to call it a reckoning, because it is like a reckoning. It's a realignment of how the world works.
Right.
And if you understand that desire is causative, that spirit speaks to you through your desires, that your desires are not wrong and bad, that you saying you want those pretty shoes or that new house or that different relationship or that you want something more for yourself is not bad. It's actually the path. It's the way. Mm-hmm. So spirit is always speaking to you through desire. Now, when you have a big desire, hey, I want to build this kind of business, or I have this financial goal, or something that you've never done before. It's a stretch goal, right? It's like you go, I don't know if I can do that. Like, how the heck is that going to happen? That's where the rubber meets the road around faith. Then you have to be like, okay, Amira told me, Debbie told me, like desire is causative, desire is how spirit speaks to me. So this desire is where I need to follow it. What do you mean? That's crazy. You haven't spoken to that person in 6 years. You think you can just call him up out of the blue and say, X, Y, and Z? Yeah. Because that's exactly the next step that's being shown to you. Yeah. You have to then take it. Okay. And it always comes in the form of a yes here. Okay.
Yeah. And I always talk about courageous leadership and how that's being courageous, right? That's stepping into it. And so kind of about stepping into it, as we kind of wrap this up, if someone were wanting to learn more about you, Amira, about the work you do, how they can even attend a summit, I'll give them a friend ticket. Just let me know, because I'm going to win that 30-day immersion. I'm going to beat Devin next time. Devin, you can listen to that online. But ultimately, where would someone go if they want to know more about you and how they could potentially work with you?
Absolutely. So the two best places to go are our free stuff page. So that's theunstoppablewoman.com/free stuff. And on there, we have our morning mindset club, which is a whole year-long training that you can get. It's amazing. It's totally free. We have downloads. We have the income breakthrough jumpstart system. We have the link to our podcast, which we put out amazing content, I think.
Yes.
I personally thank you for the validation there. Every week we have 3 podcasts every week that we put out, and it's really it's the kind of information that you need in order to understand how the universe works for your success, for you, and how you need to shift your perspective and your thinking in order to get in alignment with the order of the universe. And once you do that, everything just like drops into place. So those 2 places would be the best places to go. And then, yes, if you want to come to our next Unstoppable Woman Income Breakthrough Summit, which are fabulous 3-day events, we have one coming up in November, and ping Debbie. She'll get you in with the in crowd, right?
And so oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. It's a what?
I was just going to say, it's a 3-day event where we take you through in depth the laws that are at play to creating the success that you want, and how to help you identify what your goals are and really map that plan out. So
perfect. So yeah, if you want to work with Amira, go to theunstoppablewoman.com /free stuff, and or listen to her podcast, which I believe is also called The Unstoppable Woman, right? Or they could search you by Amira Alvarez too.
The Unstoppable Woman podcast on all channels, but if you want to go directly there on our website, it's theunstoppablewoman.com /listen.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Amira. And for those of you listening, if you'd like to hear more about how to work with me, please go to www.3, that's all spelled out, V as in Victor consulting.com, or feel free to follow me on Facebook as well. Everyone have a fantastic week. And Amira, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom. I so much appreciate it.
You're so welcome. It's fun to be here.